They can make a real choice about that.
I don't know,
That's all I would want.
it seems immediate, you know, if you vote yes, I mean, it seems like it's immediate, like maybe the private funding is already in place. I don't know, it's,
Yeah.
I don't understand
It
the
probably just needs a
objective.
little declarative statement before a question.
I don't know that you can do that in
The town of
language.
Atherton intends to, you know,
Well, there's gonna
construct
be,
blah, blah, blah.
there's a statement that goes up, that the lawyer drafts, that goes up, that describes it.
Mhm.
And then, of course, then there'll be pro and con arguments, or just pro-con arguments, or whatever. But, you know, but those are like several hundred words. But there's a small section, a paragraph that that's gotta be factual, that the attorney only himself writes. So the city attorney is charged with writing that, and it's gotta have, everything's gotta be.
However, he's gonna have a lot of input from council on Tuesday, just like we had input from council on the other ballot language. Right?
In the discussions that we had here, yes.
Yes. So it's not,
So you're not implying anything other than that?
no,
Okay.
that we had.
Right, yeah,
Right.
we had quite a bit of input during the meeting.
Exactly,
I expect a similar amount.
right,
Or we could have a 15-minute meeting.
yeah, okay. So anyway.
But
so-
is the goal of the vote, is the goal of the vote that if the public says yes, that we are now empowered to go ahead and do it? Because I don't, that's never been the plan. To me, just, that's why I'm struggling with it, because it's not like, I don't think we've asked for a mandate to go ahead and build a town center. We presented it. I mean, I don't want to be difficult, but it's not what I thought we were building up to yet. But things change.
Any other comments? Anybody else want to weigh in on this? Public? Open to public comments?
No comment. Sandy, you're slipping. I only asked the question last comment.
Sorry, that, just wanted to
We did
bring
put
to
a
the
block
town
on.
center committee this, in case you hadn't been following it, and then also to, you know, bring it up so that our architects are aware of it. And going on a maybe more positive note is update on resident activities regarding fundraising efforts and donor policies. Unfortunately, Dee Dee is not here, she's not calling in, so I asked Herb Lechner, who is a resident and involved in the nonprofit foundation for police donations. So maybe if I could just turn it over to you, Herb, and let you kind of explain where you are and what your foundation is doing. It was approved unanimously by council in the June meeting. Okay?
Thank you. Apologizing for some redundancy for the people who were at the June 20th meeting. I will very briefly describe what we are and where we are for those who did not attend the June meeting. The mission statement is the Atherton Police Foundation is a not-for-profit organization whose mission is to raise funds to financially support the Atherton Police Department so that it may continue to deliver enhanced services to our unique community. The organization was formed in response to growing budget deficits that were predicted, to provide an alternate source of income to the city that would be generated by voluntary contributions, to meet deficits or to negate cutting the police department back in any way that would compromise what has been a very strong historical support group for the community. In a way, the form of voluntary funding is sort of a means by which our residents can vote on what the standards, what the quality of service would be in a very real way. The polling place being their bank. And they could vote multiple times. The organization was put together last March, and we received our exemption status for state and federal in May and June, and spent the next few months in doing our planning. We were surprised to find that police foundations are very popular throughout the country and are strongly supported by various grants from the Justice Department, and the COPS grant also includes the establishment even of an association of associations, if you will, in which Pam Delaney, who was our consultant in helping us put this together, she was instrumental in the New York Police Foundation, one of the early large city activities that was very successful. The plans proceeded to develop, together with the city, procedures and policies for how money would be requested and offered. The ground rules under which decisions to fund or not fund would be made. And that resulted in a statement that was approved by the council regarding the policies by which requests would be made by the police department and funded by the foundation. We also proceeded to do some market testing. Clearly our market was the primary market, was the residents of Atherton, were the residents of Atherton. That turned out to have two segments. One, people who would like to support fairly minor projects, but important projects by contributing small amounts of money. And people who would like to make major impacts by contributing much larger amounts. We had informal meetings with several people in the community that represent both segments. My first meeting was with an individual who, after we talked a little bit about what we were doing, what our plans were, and how we were being organized, asked us, well, what do you want the money for? And we had at that time a preliminary wish list, and we started discussing some of the items on that list. Totally, that list may have amounted for $60,000 worth of items. And when I was not quite through the list, he said, I'll be happy to give you some money for those things. He said, but I frankly am not interested in contributing at that level. He said, I want to do something important. Why don't we build them a new building? And actually, we took steps to do some informal investigation of what buildings might, not build them a new building, get them a new building was his statement. There was one that we thought might be available at the time, close by. And we looked into that, turned out it was not available. But he has represented a segment in which we think that there are people there who recognize the problems and facilities that the police department has had for some years here and would be willing to support the police department with major contributions. So at that point, our strategy had kind of been to define the needs so that we could present them to the public, to take those needs to the public, and to do some sort of a mass solicitation of people who wanted to contribute. But we stopped at that moment and asked ourselves the question of how would something as major as a police building match with existing activities such as the task force for the town center. And especially in view of the fact that we didn't immediately see any facilities in the neighborhood that were available, already built, that could be leased or purchased to serve the purpose. We decided to, mostly through Dee Dee, who is active on this committee as well as on the foundation, try to integrate our activities with this task force activity. And it could be done in several ways, and no way is recommended at this time. The Police Foundation could simply address trying to raise funds for that portion of the building that the police would occupy. And certainly there would be no conflict with our mission in that regard. Secondarily, since the facility would probably be more than 50% dedicated to the police department, there probably would be no legal objection to our soliciting funds for the center, knowing that the police department was going to get its share out of whatever funding came. And there might even be an administrative purpose that we could serve in terms of helping with the solicitation, managing the funding, ensuring that everyone got the appropriate tax credit, and maybe we would be less restricted in how we could accumulate and manage the funding than the city rules would be. So we kind of put the brakes on any overt activities to approach the public until we had some of these issues resolved. And so we have been working through Dee Dee and hoping that something evolves that can give us the right to go out and exercise our ability to solicit money for the police department as part of your project. With that, I'll open it to questions if there are any.
I love this guy. You know, most of the projects that we work on, these public buildings, never happen unless there's someone who's enthusiastic. And they get other people enthusiastic. And that's the one thing I've seen missing. I think you all are duty bound to be good stewards of the public's money. But then the other part of it is you also have to be the cheerleader, or it won't happen. So here's our cheerleader.
That's true.
It's a great job.
So you're saying we're not enthusiastic?
I haven't seen that part yet, but I expect that part.
It's coming.
And that's a big part of what you guys have to do, because nobody else is gonna do it. Bottom line.
You
We
should
wanted
have,
to be
you should have
diligent.
been there and met the guy who I was talking to.
Yeah.
He said, I want to do something significant.
I'll come down anytime and talk to him.
Okay,
So the level of funding that we've been talking about at the table, $10 to $12 million, is that with less maybe too, so maybe it's net 10. Is that, in your instinct, is that within the realm of reason if the folks felt the police got more than half of that and could we raise $10 million?
The individual I was talking to probably would not be a candidate for doing the funding totally himself. But he happens to be well connected throughout the community with other people who could easily do it alone, or certainly if a group was put together of 4 or 5 key individuals, it is entirely feasible. I think that if it were also in combination with a needed program for the town center itself, it becomes even more feasible.
any other questions to her? Public comments? Well, I'm really grateful that you don't lose that.
Next time, let's send you some stuff for presentation on your iPad.
So, thank you for jumping in on such late notice. I called in this morning at about 10 o'clock saying, Dee Dee can't call in, she can't give us the update, and so would you do that for us? So, I appreciate it, and,
I do have a
Oh.
question, I'm sorry, it just came up.
sure.
You asked the first question I was gonna ask, which
Sure.
I'm very grateful, and I wanna commend you on your wonderful work. This meeting that you had with this, well-funded, resident, could you give me an approximate date of that? Was it recently, in last year, last 2 years?
I can give you a pretty good, within the month date. We, in September, as a foundation, we're kind of finalizing our plans on
This
how we
is
launch
2011,
2011.
thank you.
Remember, we're formed in March of 2011. And so we were going to finalize our launch plans, and the market testing was in preparation for that decision and launch. So it was September or October of last year, I believe, that several of us in the foundation contacted individuals. And that would have been the time frame in which I contacted this one.
I just want to make a little clarification that the foundation was formed March 2011 or 2012?
11.
11, okay. So it's really been on ice for
Well,
a year.
in the sense on ice and in preparation.
In preparation.
We didn't want to go out before we
Right.
had our exemptions. We did not want to go out before we had cleared with the city, the
Mhm.
manager, the financial people, and of course the police department,
Mhm.
what our procedures and policies would be and what we were asking for. I mean, we can't tell the police department what it needs.
Mhm.
We can, but we won't. And also to have a plan and have material put together and specifics for the people, it's not a little planning job, it turns out.
Well, this was kind of in preparation to our design competition in 2011. We were going through all of that and working towards that. So there's just a lot of groundwork that is being laid, has been laid and is being laid to do this as openly as we possibly can and reasonably, so that the residents have the right to see what's happening and step up. I think there's no doubt about it, that in anybody's mind, that from council who voted unanimously to move forward, that in support of the new town center, new police department, to all of the staff, all of the police department people, that we sorely need new facilities. How those new facilities look, what they cost, how we use them, that's all yet to be flushed out. I think we've got a good beginning. Nichols Millburg came up with a very stunning design. The presentation was spectacular. You've convinced us that you can work with us and take direction. You're not it's my way or the highway kind of thing. Your
I've been
ego's
given that
not in
speech
it.
yet.
Yeah, but it's obviously, your ego's not in it. Obviously, from your perspective, you want to build the biggest and the best looking building possible, but, you're willing to work with us within our budgets and within our constraints of our small town. And I think that that's very evident here, so.
So Elizabeth, before
Yes.
we move off this agenda item, the only comment I think just be good to make clear from what we heard from Herb is that we've assumed for a long time that we'd be able to raise funds. It sounds from Herb like that confidence is well seated.
Well, it's gone another step forward.
Yeah, I mean, we have to go do it. The hard work is actually doing it, but, and maybe leading to the next agenda item, with the things you were just summarizing, that we've done an exhaustive study of square footage to the point where we can't really do any more without drawing plans.
Exactly.
And we've got some lovely marketing things in hand that if we want to go out in parallel, and if we continue to move forward, which sounds like we are, we can go talk to donors.
So, go ahead, Rose.
Well, I just have a question that's sort of going around, I don't know if we should even talk about this, but, if we're going back and putting this on the ballot, and we've got these funds that are pretty well, sure to happen, and the voting says no,
What does that mean?
What is that?
That's why I wouldn't put anything on the ballot.
Well, that's not our choice.
That's city council. This task force that we can decide that. We can just give input on what we think the wording should be, if it's on the ballot or,
I mean, I think that councilmen would think about
It's a,
that.
it's a big roll of the dice, because
Given what
people could be in a
Herb
bad
just
mood.
Reported
Say no to everything.
that
Happens all the time.
everything sounds good for the betterment of the town, improving the facilities, and yet putting it on the agenda seems like
We're gonna lose our mayor. He has another appointment at 3 o'clock, so, we still have hope.
Apologize.
I'll take your vote.
Thank you, Bill.
Sure, you're empowered to vote.
Yes!
we're not voting.
No, we're not voting.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down.
I'm
Sandy?
sorry, Dilla, I
Sandy?
don't, yeah, Herb, I'm really inspired to hear that you were fishing for bluegill and you pulled in a salmon. And to think that you're not gonna rebait your hook now and go get another salmon or 2 or 4, but to wait and go get your rigging and make sure that you're all outfitted before you go fishing again seems a little, I'm not understanding your logic, because you just want to see if you could get some money to fund a little project, and somebody says, well, why don't we get them a building, and I have a lot of people to do. Why aren't you talking to these people? Why weren't you talking to them at the end of September of last year? I mean, good gracious, I mean, you know, you're ready. I don't think that you really need to, I'm missing the part where I gotta have my fly, and I gotta have my hook sharpener, and I gotta be just ready before I go in and see if I can catch any more
You
salmon.
know,
I completely
I'm missing
misunderstood.
the fishing metaphor.
I
Maybe Phil.
thought,
Yeah.
I thought the Alexis took their time to
Elucidating
make
here.
sure they were getting all their ducks in a row.
Yeah, but
And
the
that's-
fact to come back and say, you know what, we've got commitments for enough money to build this building, and we're ready to go, would make a great progress in your process, in my opinion.
Oh, it definitely
But
would.
I don't understand why you're waiting, that's what
Um,
I'm not clear, because you seem very encouraged, I'm very encouraged with your results.
The primary reason that we're waiting is that the person who was enthusiastic, I'm sure the people he had in mind to help him, the first thing they ask for is, please show me your plans. How much? Where? Do you have the support of the community? Do you have the support of the council? That's what I meant by community. Do you have the support of the council? And that came from him directly. Show me the plan, show me the money, what are you going to do? And is it clear? Is it ready to go? I'm not going to go out and exercise a bunch of deep pocket friends and then turn up and have the council turn it down, turn up that your budget estimates are way out of the sky. And the further issue that we did not want to go around stimulating interest for a police department in the total absence of, or in the possibility of running into conflict with, here come the town center guys soliciting for the other half. We felt it had to be a coordinated effort. And it was with apologies that I went to Chief Flint, because we were kind of getting geared up to get a vehicle and a few other things that were on his list. And I had to say that we don't want to announce ourselves, we don't want to approach the public on 2 market segments at once, where we're asking for whatever you can throw into the tin cup, and we're asking for a project, half of which is the town center.
So I'd like to make a comment on that. I think that large donors, people, I don't know who it is, they're usually very private people, but it's like Bill Lane at Portola Valley, he could have written the $17 million check, right? He seeded the fundraising efforts by writing the first big check. Then he got the community to rally around, and everybody felt that they could make some contribution. And I think that's the spirit I would like to see. I don't want to see just one donor write a big check and, say, this is my police department or my town center. I think that we get lead donors. This is how I've always felt that this whole committee and this whole process was gonna work, is that then the whole community could rally around, and essentially, they would be voting on the project with their contributions. And that's because they see the need, they want to be part of it, and, you know, if Bill were here, he'd be saying, you know, he's real experienced with fundraising efforts. He's done tons of it over at Trinity, and you get donor walls, and people want to have their name in an oak leaf or a, you know, a tree branch or a brick in the, you know, plaza or something, so that they feel like they're a part of it. And that kind of brings the community together. That kind of brings the feeling that, you know, this is my town, this is my police department, this is my administration, my city manager, my, you know, building department, because I go there all the time. I get a permit to remodel my house, I get, you know, upgrade or whatever. So I think that's the thing. So it just makes a more community approach.
The sense I got from Dee Dee is, just from informal conversations when we've been here, is that they didn't want to get ahead of things. They had a good sense, they talked to a lot of people, they had a sense that their support would be there, but they didn't want to get ahead of the process.
Right, and we were very careful in the very beginning in 2010 to lay out the process. And, you know, we've adhered to that, and now all of a sudden, we've got a different process in front of us having to do with this ballot measure, which seems, you know, taken out of our hands. But anyway, so, yes, go ahead.
If I may?
Yes.
Having given the reasons why not, let me say that there is no hesitation once the gates are open, once we know what we're selling, once we know we have support and unanimity or something approximating it, we're ready to charge. Should there be any question in your mind?
No,
Okay. And I think time is of the essence. You know, people die, people go away. Those that are here last year are not necessarily here next.
all Facebookers
No, that would,
Temporary.
Facebook's 18 today, you don't want.
Yeah,
And then they have different feelings
a
about it.
couple million shares, you know, 15, 20.
Okay, so do we have any other questions for Herb and just to be clear that this is a resident-run organization, this isn't our committee organization, it's not, the fundraising efforts are not being sanctioned or under the auspices of council or any,
It is public,
it,
not for profit.
it's,
Public, not for profit.
right, yes, okay, so, all right. So next steps on the process and schedule and set next meeting and the agenda.
I've got a lot to say.
So I'm just going
You can, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
So Herb is going to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Herbert.
Good job.
Don't forget to take this home.
Get you a bunch of material on your iPad so you can shoot.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Get one of those little
here.
things with the iPad where you can swipe their credit cards.
Okay. So, here we are. It is August 2nd, and a lot of people are still on vacation. I think we're gonna lose one of our committee members in August, right? For a couple of
Most of the time.
more.
Starting Saturday.
Uh-huh.
You go fishing.
He's, so, he speaks your language, Sandy, with the fishing metaphor.
Sorry about the analogy.
I'm sorry. Not fisherman. So, I think our next steps should be that, well, we really can't do a lot more with the architects at this time unless we have some funds.
Mhm.
Because their pro bono work has really kind of tapped us out at this point and gotten us to where we are today with reduction in size, reduction in costs, giving us that ability. So,
The only other thing I would say we would be willing to do is still, like, if Herb puts together a group of 2 or 3 or 8 people and he would like a presentation, I'd be delighted to come down and help give the presentations on the project.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll tell him
yes, good.
that. He's my neighbor.
Yeah, he lives right across the street from me.
Yeah, he's the right kind of guy, just,
Yeah,
that's what it takes, is somebody that's
yeah. So
enthusiastic.
Steve, do you have any
Yeah.
input on this?
On the
Next
next
step.
step? Well, and I apologize, I haven't been able to come to the last few council meetings that have involved this. But what is our current mandate? What are we supposed to be doing? Because that should drive what our next steps are. So do we have a period, or are we, it would seem like at some point, we were gonna return to council and say, we think our project budget is between $10 and $12 million, and that's net of the building fund, it's 10, and we think that we can raise the money through the foundation, and we would like the authorization to go raise money, and including maybe a seed fund to do the plans and get more accurate estimates. I mean, is that where we're at or not?
No, we can't ask, we're not gonna ask, go ahead.
With this ballot,
Yeah.
But what is the ballot about? Is this just, I mean, and I'm sorry if this is inappropriate, is this just something to do with the library? Is that why it's, what's it gotta do with the path we've been going on for 3 years?
it happens to
What's the
involve
point?
this project too, though. It happens
But
to
what's,
involve this
but,
project.
okay, so this states that there's a political reason to have it on the ballot, but what's the point? What do we actually wanna learn from the ballot? Like, let's just for a second say it's well-meaning, it's well-intended. What would we like to learn? If we're gonna give feedback to council, what is our goal to be on the ballot?
Great
I mean,
argument.
let's just, this for a second, assume it's well-intended. What do we wanna ask the public?
What's on the ballot, wasn't put on there by us, it was put on there by the
Well, we
council.
can give feedback to council.
You can try.
Sure, okay. But what would we like to learn, I guess? Maybe let's say it differently. What would this group, if it's gonna be on the ballot?
First question might have, why is it on the ballot at all?
Yeah, it seems a little odd, given what we were told to do by
I
council,
mean,
but,
well, one of the things about, hey, once you get the money, is all this kind of crazy stuff. If I was an investor, I would wait until all this crazy stuff is done before I write a check.
Well, you know, council may have made their decision to have a ballot issue absent of some of the information we learned today. Maybe the more they learn about what the possibilities for this project are, they realize there's nothing to be gained from a ballot measure. There's absolutely nothing good that could help.
I
help
think
this
the council
project.
learned about the foundation
In June.
in early June, and then the ballot issue came about at the end of June.
but let's don't argue about whether the council's right or wrong to ask for it. Let's just, maybe we can do that, I don't mean to say, but let's just say that it was well and. It did that, I'm so sorry.
He calls me.
I know, no, what's the other one?
Something with J,
No.
Janet or
No,
something.
Janet.
Oh,
Sorry. All right,
So, well, I
so-
guess,
Sorry, fine.
Yeah.
I think it's a little difficult for us to figure out what our next step is
Yeah.
going to be on the process and schedule, because until we find out what
Yeah.
if council actually continues to vote on having the ballot measure, I mean, there's a possibility that council will vote to not have the ballot measure about the town center task force. That's gonna ultimately be decided and talked about on Tuesday. So if that were the case, then I think that our next steps would be to put together the marketing materials in a cohesive marketing presentation, give it to Herb and his foundation, and turn them loose to get pledges and to start that ball rolling, at least to maybe get some funds to then start you rolling on the revised schematics,
You get
so
drawings.
that, and, yeah.
What would that
To do-
cost?
So
To
are
do
you talking
the
about
phase
before
one.
November, or
Pardon me?
Are you talking about before November or just before
I'm-
November?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking,
She's saying if it falls out, if the council
oh,
decides that it's
but
next
if
meeting,
it
not to
doesn't,
include
oh,
this
okay, I
on the
think
ballot.
that, you know,
Yeah.
So Les, how much money do you need to take it to, you know, what?
Normal schematic?
Yeah, schematic, something we get a more refined sense of cost from, and
It
does this
would
really fit in
be-
the departments, can really look at a plan and say, yeah, that works for me, or really doesn't.
According to the material I gave Elizabeth, it would be like 90 or 100 grand probably. That goes beyond us, and there's all of our consultants getting in the mix too. So
Does that include any environmental, or is it
Does
just
not.
any geotech in there?
Just drawings.
Right, the
So
total.
That's
total-
our insurance carriers, any architect's insurance carriers won't allow us to do geotech.
No.
So we spend another
Yeah.
20 grand on
Yeah.
miscellaneous consultants.
And it's, I think Mayor Widmer has indicated that
Yeah.
he would be willing to go to council and ask for some money to be released from the building department fund to do some of the preliminary work, like the geotech stuff and everything. I'm not sure how that will be received by council, and if it were, coming from the foundation, would investors feel okay about releasing some of that money, or does the foundation have to raise all of the money all at once?
Mm-mm. It depends on which is the donor,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
Yeah.
so,
And there's no point in having all the money at once because you can't spend it for a period.
No,
for
yeah,
a
you
period
have a
of time.
seed fund of
Okay.
like $200,000 to do what you
So-
need to do.
so those are kind of the next steps at that point, so. And I think that if we set another meeting, it should be, in September,
Early September, second weekend,
okay?
not the first.
So maybe that's what we can do, and,
So, Elizabeth, so if the, so are we making a recommendation to council about the,
ballot language?
yeah, are we making a recommendation to not have a
No,
ballot, or to
no.
have language on it? in a
No, because
different way?
all we were allowed to do is just discuss it. We're
Okay.
not taking any action or making any recommendations.
Okay, got it.
Because council is supposed to have not had any input on the language, how it's been written. It was strictly the city attorney who wrote it
Got it.
in his isolation. And then it's being brought forth for council to